Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Jill Gary. I'm a Houston realtor, and today I want you to meet my friend Ed Kampf. And I'm not kidding when I say he's an expert in mold. He truly is an expert in mold. So Ed, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Ed Kampf. My company is Hygienitech Solutions. I always run from the claim that I'm an expert because it's life's a learning process, and I'm learning about mold every single day, and it's an ongoing education because mold is just so complicated. But I'm hoping to keep it simple today for y'all.
Perfect, perfect, Ed. So now today we're gonna have some questions for you. Are you ready?
Sure, fire away.
Okay. Well, first question. Is black mold actually more dangerous than other colors, or is color a misleading way to judge the risk?
It is misleading. Black mold is actually a colloquial term that was given by the media back in the 90s to one strain of mold called Stachybotrys. And Stachybotrys is a toxic mold, and it's not black, it's green. So when you look at the color of mold is basically what it's feeding on, not necessarily can you look at it and tell, oh, that's penicillium or that's aspergillus or anything. There are some distinctive characteristics of certain molds, but when they say black mold, that's just a generic term that's used.
Got it. So, from what you say, green mold is more dangerous than black mold.
Well, yeah, let me back up. Uh,
Okay.
there are two strains of mold that we look at when we're doing a mold test, and we get the lab report. One is Chitomium, and another one is Stachybotrys. And those are considered black molds. They're toxic mold, marker molds. They need a water source to feed on. It's not going to be a mold that you see that appears on a drywall unless there's a leak behind the wall or on an air vent or the common places in the bathtub where it's very prominent to see mold. But it does need a water source, and it comes in different variations. But again, it's what it's feeding on, but it's mostly a slime mold.
Well, thank you so much for the information and the clarification. Now, is mold illness a legitimate medical threat for the average buyer, or is it the real estate industry overreacting to the risk that only affects a tiny percentage of people?
That's a broad question. As a mold inspector, we like to interview someone who lives in a home because they can tell us more about the health of a home than anybody else. I always say don't let a mold inspector tell you whether your home is toxic or not. How do you feel? So yes, mold will reduce your immune system. That is a gateway for other illnesses to come in. So, but what are the illnesses? And they could be sneaky illnesses. Are you having unusual allergies? Are you having, uh, chronic respiratory issues? Are you having skin rashes? Do you have migraines? Do you have nosebleeds? And then it elevates up. Are you having fatigue? Are you lethargic? Are you having brain fog? I mean, we start at the small symptoms and just kind of work our way up to find out, just how much mold is in a house. Now, conversely, there could be 10 people in a home and 9 are fine, but one is having an issue. Or and that one person we call the canary in the coal mine, where their immune system is a little weakened. Children or elderly, they have weaker immune systems than most people. But if we go into a home and we test it and it tests clean, but they're showing symptoms of mold, that's not really indicative of the house being toxic. It's just kind of indicative of them being hypersensitive to certain molds. So we have to weigh that balance. But yeah, I don't like walking into a home and making a determination whether it's toxic or not, because there's really no 100% absolute test that you can do in a home. But I rely heavily on, are they feeling it? Because with mold, you either see it, smell it, or feel it. And I lean heavily towards them feeling it. They're going to tell me about the health of the house.
It just reminded me when we first moving back, me and my son, when we first moved back to this house, for the first year, he wouldn't stop coughing. Like he was keep on coughing his lungs out. So I was like, must be allergy. I take him to doctor after doctors and they say, oh, must be allergy. And one day I saw this advertisement for vent cleaning
Mhm.
for $30 per vent, something like that. So, okay, I want to test it out. I want to have my vent clean. And then they came in my house. Of course, they upsell me to that cleaning. So I did that. And surprisingly, my son stopped coughing. Like right now, the max he will get is just, running nose. But that a significant difference between, cleaning and not cleaning. I suspected that, there's a lot of mold in my Dutch, in my vent as well. So do you feel like the black dust from the vent are actually mold?
It's always a good idea to clean the air ducts in the house. You don't know, or maybe you do know, if the person before you had cats or dogs, or if there's dander or allergens in the mold, or in the air ducts, or dust. There's an air filter, in the intake that's supposed to, catch all of the dust and all the dirt that we breathe through our home. Indoor air is 200 times more polluted than outdoor air. So the air filter changing is very important. And I like the cheap air filters, the cheap, the blue ones that you get at the grocery store, because air filters have become, we collect 99.9% of the dust and dirt. That's not good. That puts a strain on the AC system. The AC system has to breathe also. But it could be, but I've done many of inspections in a house where I'm like, yeah, just get your air ducts cleaned. It's as simple as that. But what is behind you? I put on my glasses to get a better look. Is that a paneling? Is that wood paneling?
Yeah, that's wood paneling. And
Okay.
they're about this wide, so maybe like 5 6 panel across this wall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because one of the biggest sources of mold in a home is wallpaper. We see wallpaper in bathrooms, not a good idea, or kitchens, not a bad idea, because mold loves paper. But also in wood paneling. In the 60s and 70s, they used wood paneling, and it's coming back now. But wood paneling kind of suffers, it suffocates the wall, and it's always a source of mold. That doesn't mean that there's a problem. And there are, there's mold in every house. There's mold on the International Space Station. It's an important part of our ecosystem. You can't avoid it. But the way to avoid mold from colonizing in your home is air circulation. Mold loves stagnant air. Mold loves humidity. And as long as you do that, then you're going to have a healthy home. Keep the ceiling fans on. If you can buy an air purifier, have the air purifier. It's another source of taking the home, of cleansing the air that's in your home. I'm a big fan of that. I tell people, put a little fan in your bathroom after you take a hot shower. That little noisemaker on the ceiling doesn't do anything, but that's why we see mold in bathrooms. It's because you take a hot shower, that steam is raised, the humidity in that room. There's already mold in your house. You can't avoid it. All you're doing is feeding it with that humidity and with that steam. But if you put a little fan in for an hour and reclaim the temperature of that bathroom, you won't even have mold in your grout.
And you will be super happy to know that because of you, I now have 2 fans in my bathroom, and it's cost $70 each from Amazon. They are around big, and they do the job. They circulate the air, and every time after I shower, I turn them on, and I haven't had any mold problem or anything like that, and I love it better than the fan that exists in the bathroom.
Yeah,
so thank you.
It's a noisemaker. It's all it is a noisemaker. Anyway, well,
Yeah.
that that alone, you're saving yourself, a long-term headache.
Okay, so we gotta go to the next question.
Okay.
Does bleach actually kill mold?
No. No. Bleach discolors mold. And when it discolors it, people assume that it's dead. But to get a little bit more detail, 250,000 mold spores fits on the tip of a pin. 250,000. So when you see it, it's already started to colonize. Now, the very center of a mold spore is a nucleus that has a protective wall, and you have to infiltrate, you have to denature the mold to kill it. So all of these solutions that you buy that says kills mold, you have to denature it. It's like, the Friday the 13th movie where they keep coming back to life, Mike Myers and Jason. That's what mold is. When you use bleach, all you're doing, and 90% of bleach is just water. But if you're bleaching it, you're just discoloring it, then it comes back. So, but I tell people, if you see mold on a wall, or if you see it on something and it just randomly appears, just take a damp cloth and wipe it off. A lot of people panic if they see mold. Again, mold can land anywhere, and it's usually, in a tall ceiling in a 2-story house. You see it in a spot. How did it get up there? It found an area where there's a little bit higher humidity. It could be from a sunlight, and it could be, below the ceiling fan, so it's stagnant air, and it grows, and just wipe it off.
So when do people need service from someone like you, an expert in mold, to come to their house and do a remedy for their mold treatment? When do they need that? If they can just wipe it off, so why do they need you?
Well, if it was just a wet rag that could replace me, then I'd look for another industry. But when we go into a home, and again, we start with asking questions, and then we take air samples. We take air samples in kitchens and bathrooms and various areas of the house, and then we take the samples to a lab, and the lab will determine the strain of mold and also the spore counts. So we want to make sure that the strain of mold are all just common outside typical molds, and we want to make sure the spore counts are all normal. And if we see spore counts that are elevated, then they need a service, because mold doesn't go away on its own. It just basically will sit. It can sit dormant for 100 years, and then I tell people, water doesn't cause mold. When you have a flood in your house or a water source, it just enables the mold that's already there to start colonizing. So going back to the lab report, we want to make sure it doesn't have the black mold on it. We want to make sure it's just the common mold. And then we want to be able to do a treatment if needed to get it down to a healthy level.
Wow. So what can you name 3 red flags that a major mold issue is actually hiding behind a new drywall?
There are some mold inspectors who will test inner walls. There is no home, new construction or old construction, that would pass a mold test in an inner wall. None. But that mold can sit dormant for 100 years. We shouldn't worry about it. Now, you see a new construction going up, and the frame is up, and then it rains the next day. The next day, the sun's out. Welcome to Houston. And then they start putting Tyvek wrap around it, and then they close it all up. Well, that is a perfect opportunity in our Texas heat for that mold, moisture in the wood, to all of a sudden, feed mold. So again, that mold that's in the inner wall, that's not breathable space. The only time that mold would be a concern is if there was like a water leak that was in that inner wall. Then it's going to feed that mold, and then it becomes an issue. So I don't really consider mold in an inner wall to be a red flag. But if there's been a leak behind a dishwasher, and 75% of the mold issues in home, is basically from either behind a dishwasher or the water line in the refrigerator, or maybe a bathtub. But you would smell it. You would smell it. Don't ignore the smell of mold. And most people, oh, that's just mildew, or that's just musty. Well, mildew is mold. The reason people say mildew is they don't want to say mold. But if you smell it, clean doesn't have a smell. And all of a sudden you're smelling something, then that's kind of a red flag.
Got it. Now, just to rephrase it, every single house has mold behind the wall,
Yes.
because of the weather in Houston, even the new construction home. So if you test the air behind the wall, 99.9% of the time you find mold. However, you have to provide the environment where mold is not growing. Then that will be okay. That will be good. But if you create an environment for mold to grow, like leaks, constant leaks,
Then it's going to grow.
then
But yeah,
go.
I want to test breathable space. Now, if I see something in a wall, and we can use infrared to see if there's something going on in that wall. If there's something going on in that wall that we're seeing a high moisture content, we're going to take a sample inside there, again, to see what the strains of mold are, or the spore counts. Anything active is just going to start colonizing and growing more. So, okay. Now, most of the I'm going to go a little ahead of you, because I want people to know this, especially realtors. Most calls that we get, I need a mold inspection, is because they see mold on an air vent on a ceiling. And that's very common. My advice is just clean it off and see if it comes back. And also, as a realtor, look up. Before listing a house, look up, because there are buyers who have walked on houses because they see a dirty air vent, and the home inspector is going to say suspected microbial growth. But I'm a fan of sellers being proactive. If you have a yellow line on a ceiling from a water leak 20 years ago, just paint it. Let's not go into the panic of, I think we have mold just yet. But if you look up in closets and you look up on air vents and everything, and then tell your sellers, hey, let's clean that, that's not deceptive. That's just good housekeeping.
And I'm a big fan of avoiding major conflict or big conversation too. Not that we're hiding anything from a listing. It's just buyers are actually more sensitive to certain things in the house than it actually is. So we just before there's an inspection done, I don't want to scare them off with a mold event. So
Because,
yes, I do that.
because people are used to hearing, oh, that's going to cost 30,000, that's cost 50,000, that's going to cost 100,000. That's how people equate to mold remediation. I'm not a mold remediator, but 90% of homes with mold issues, meaning there are higher spore counts, it needs a treatment, it needs a refresher. And what we do is we treat homes for mold that need it, and then we test it afterwards to make sure that it is healthy. And I wrote this, from mold to sold for homeowners, for realtors, for investors. It's kind of a mold for dummies where I talk about things to do in advance if you're selling a home. When someone pays for an inspection on a home, and then all of a sudden the inspection says you need an electrician, you need a roofer, you need a foundation guy, you need a plumber, you need a mold guy. It's like so overwhelming for a first-time home buyer. And also it's, oh my God, I'm going to spend over $1,000, maybe $2,000 on inspections in a house I'm not even going to buy. So we want to make sure that when I get an inspection report in, I'll determine whether there's a need for a mold inspection or not, or or if there is a mold inspection, I want to get the report back quickly to let them know that it's all safe and healthy. I look at everything as if I'm putting my family in that home.
Now that leads us to the next question. When a mold report comes back positive, buyers often want to run. How do you explain the remediation process to a panic buyer to show them that mold is actually fixable issue rather than a permanent structural defect?
That's a good question. I have, many cases I'm brought into the fact after a buyer has already walked, and I get the copy of the mold inspection, and it's like, this house is healthy, but they hear the word mold, and I teach a mold class to realtors, and it's for them to be educated in how they can test. One buyer walked on a house that was $2.4 million because nobody could explain that it was an outdoor sample of air that they took, not an indoor sample. So,
oh no.
But when I do a mold inspection on a house, I want to talk to the buyers. I want to talk to the sellers. I want to talk to the buyer's agent. I want to talk to the listing agent. I want everybody to understand my report. And when I write a summary, and that's another thing, when you hire a mold inspection company, they'll tell you I charge $400, and then all of a sudden they charge for every single air sample they take, and they might take 10 air samples, so you're at $1,400. And then if you want a summary, they might charge another $400. And then if you want a remediation protocol, there's another. And then there's another mold inspector that will take air samples, and attach a generic remediation protocol to their report. So it's like, what does that tell you? It needs it or it doesn't. But I make sure I get everybody on the same page and letting them know if there's an issue or if there isn't an issue. If there's a problem, here's a fast solution. And we try to make things work. I help realtors sell homes by eliminating and educating those on mold. And a lot of mold inspectors know nothing about mold, but I've been treating for a dozen years. So I understand what's an issue and what isn't an issue.
So can a seller use high-end air purifier or ozone machines to cheat an air quality test? And how do you catch someone trying to mask a mold problem?
That's a great question. First of all, air purifiers, good. Ozone, bad. I do not like ozone machines. And ozone machines are outlawed in California and Canada. They're deadly for plants, people, and pets. And they also emit their own little smell. And again, clean doesn't have a smell. So, and stay away from plug-in deodorizers and things that'll mask things. But what's the other half of your question?
So how do you catch someone who trying to mask, all their mold problem with no smell?
Masking a mold problem is hard to do. And that's why, I believe there's nothing more important than the air that's in your house, the air that you're breathing in your house. And the AC system is basically the lungs of the house. So do I think every house should have a mold inspection? Yes and no. It's a smart thing to do. But I kind of rely on the health of the people who are selling the house to determine, I've been in the house 25 years. I've never had any issues. That's a good indicator. But I don't think you can mask a mold issue. And if you do, what's it called? Treble damages? Yes, lawyers will get involved.
Okay, Ed. So is it a massive red flag if the same company offers to do both initial mold testing and actual remediation for the mold?
Yes and no. It
Okay.
depends. It depends on, on the ethics of the company. I do testing after I do a treatment, and the testing that I do is for me, not for the homeowner,
Mm.
because I want to ensure that the house is healthy. So I don't charge for the post-treatment testing. I share it with them, but it has to meet my standards on whether I deem that house is healthy or not. So in most cases, yes and no. I mean, yes, but in my case, like I said, I'm not charging for a mold inspection. It's not an add-on fee. I'm doing it for me because I want to see the before and I want to see the after. Because one thing about mold inspectors is we wear the crown of responsibility. We're not like a regular home inspector. It's like see an electrician, see a plumber, see a blah, 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 blah. With a mold inspector, I don't put on my report, consult with another mold inspector.
Mm.
Basically, we have to prove to ourselves. And there are times when we do a treatment and I don't like the results. The buyer, the homeowners would never know, but I know. And I'm not going to deem this house. There's something that we missed, or there's something that wasn't closed. There are things that happen with an attic door that's open or a chimney flue that's open, where it's like, wait a second, we're getting too much mold in this house for the treatment, and it's not meeting my level. So I want to go back and treat. So for us, all we care about is putting people in healthy homes, making homes healthy. That's basically our bottom line. If it's not healthy, and we go back.
Okay, so now when you go back for a second treatment, will you charge for that second treatment?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That was on us. We missed something. And it could be something active.
Okay, is the mold something that we have to treat every year, like termite?
I wish, but no. No, be good for my business. No, when I treat a home, I give the occupants specific instructions on how to keep that home healthy and how to avoid the issue. It should be one and done.
As long as they follow your recommendations and make sure
Yes,
there's no moisture that's staining. Okay.
that's it. One of the issues that we're seeing in a lot of homes is, some empty nesters where they have a second floor and the kids are gone. So they shut the door and they turn the ceiling fans off. In some cases, they shut, the vents. Don't do that. Keep the doors open, keep air circulation. Don't allow the mold any area to colonize. And that typically becomes a problem. And it's an easily solved problem. Now, we can talk about all this all day long, but I typically charge about $1 a square foot to treat mold in a house. It's about $1 a square foot. So it's not the massive remediation bills that you get from mold remediation contractors, which I'm not a big fan of mold remediation contractors because they know that they can charge whatever they want, and they do. But I'm not a restoration company. I bow out if it's something that I don't think I'm going to be able to solve. But I'm here kind of as a disruptor to show that mold isn't something to run away from. If there's a problem, we'll fix it. We'll show you that it's fixed, and then you have a healthy home and time to move on.
Now, tell us more. Tell us more ways to prevent the mold from colonizing. Tell us more ways to keep our house mold free. Actually, not mold free, but minimal.
Minimal.
Yeah.
I am a big fan on beautiful days of opening the windows and letting the house breathe. And that's something that people shy away from. And I even had a couple of clients tell me, oh, a mold inspector told me don't open the windows because you're allowing mold in. And that's ridiculous. It's an important part of our ecosystem. You can't avoid it. But any opportunity that you have to help to let the house breathe naturally, get the stale air out, get the fresh air in, and do that. There's nothing healthier for you or the house. The new construction houses, they're building them so tight. And every time I hear the word energy efficient, I'm thinking that's inhaling, but it's not letting the house to exhale. So we need to let houses exhale. Open windows, let the house breathe. You'll have a healthy home.
Mm-hmm.
The
Wow.
humidity part of that, the humidity, just keep the air circulating. I know during the summertime, the electric bills get really high and you don't want to, but let the air circulate. Don't create too humid of an environment, especially if you're going away on vacation, 78, 80, but keep the ceiling fans on, keep air circulating, and you're fine.
Yeah, I was about to say ceiling fan is better than the AC running on a low temperature.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how often do you see quick fixes lead to lawsuits against agents and seller a year down the line if, the house is not properly disclosed or treated?
Good question. There's an expression among lawyers: mold is gold, and
Oh,
they believe that mold issues. And I've been involved in 4 mold cases. 2 of them, I received enough documentation to tell the lawyers, you don't have a case, and you're not asking the right questions, and they just disappear because they think people hear mold. I know of one person who wrote a check for $50,000 just to walk away, and they sent me the mold inspection after they paid, and it didn't even have an address on the mold inspection. They couldn't even verify it was their property. So people are in fear of that. I had a case last week where the buyer in Galveston purchased the house 3 years ago, and there's mold in it now. They didn't do a mold inspection. You're buying a house near water where there's humidity. But I saw the inspection report on the house when they bought it. It was clean. So what happened in between when they bought it and when they actually occupied it, which was about 90 days? Did they have the utilities on? There's so many moving parts. But I got a call from a realtor a couple of months ago. Ed, I sold a house with mold to my first-time home buyers. I need your help. And I went to the house and I talked to the buyers. And within 5 minutes, I surmised they brought the mold in with them. It wasn't a moldy house. There wasn't a mold inspection done on that house, which would have, when there's a mold inspection done, a mold inspection reduces your liability, the seller's liability, the buyer's liability. But this was a case where they brought the mold in with them, which is a lot of cases, many cases. How do you bring mold in with them? Were you going to ask me that question?
yes. How do you do that? How do you bring mold into a house?
How do you bring? Well, let's say you were in a moldy environment beforehand, and you bring the contents of what was in that house. In this case, that wasn't the excuse, but they bought furniture that was in their parents' garage for a period of time, and there were fabrics. When you have a fabric in a garage, we don't test garage because the garage is outside, but you're bringing it, but you're in an environment with high humidity and stagnant air, and you bring it into your house, and all of a sudden it's going to sporulate, and that's what that happened in that case. Now, it was an easy solution. I actually fixed it for them, and I didn't even charge them for it. It was that easy. But the thing is, now they love their realtor again.
You introduce more to us about your book. We would love to hear more.
Mold to Sold. I wrote this based on the class that I teach. I teach a 1-hour CE class. I train mold inspectors as well. But there were no books on mold that spoke from a standpoint of, that I wanted. All of them were like very technical or mold issues. And I wanted something that was like for a mold for dummies, understanding and overcoming mold. I have mold myths in there, which one of the myths is, does bleach kill mold? I also have facts in here about mold. Mold is in the Bible. Mold is in Leviticus. It goes back a long ways. The priests wanted the house to be mold free and would check on it. And if it wasn't mold free, they would have to destroy, the home. I have stories from a couple of clients who have had issues with mold, and how they sought. One of my clients who's in here became a naturopath, and she deals with clients with mold, and some various stories about horses and mold, because a lot of horses died because of Stachybotrys that was in wet hay. So I kept it kind of interesting, and my opinion, on a lot of the sketchiness of the industry. So, but it's a comprehensive book that everybody, they don't give you a book when you have a child. They don't give you a book when you buy a house. They give you an owner's manual when you buy a car. What's more important? But this is just kind of an easy to read, book with little stories, little attitude. It might make some mold remediators mad, but I'm proud of it. And I think if somebody reads it, especially realtors, they'll not run when they hear that there's a mold issue. And I teach them what a mold inspection is and how to read a mold inspection.
Now, is the mold problems a Houston problem or a Texas problem, or any other states have mold as well, so they can look for your book?
I just read the top 25 cities with mold issues. Now, the first dozen were in Florida. And then after that was Louisiana. And if you've ever been in Louisiana, you know how hot and humid that city is. I mean, that state is pure hell in the summertime. And then there's Houston with Galveston, Austin, San Antonio, and Dallas, because, we're any place that's by water, you're going to have higher humidity. Galveston was the top one in Houston. And I don't do a lot of mold work in Galveston, because it's a beach house. Sometimes they close them up for the summertime, and then there's more of an odor issue than anything else. But it's not from a water leak or anything. But yeah, but Texas ranks, in the top 25, 30, but we're not certainly, I make a better living in Florida.
Oh, any last thing that you want to talk to the audience about, Ed?
Well, I'm available for any questions, and realtors call me, all the time about reading a home inspection where there's suspected microbial growth in the attic, or they have a mold inspection from another company. They want another pair of eyes on. I'm more than happy to help them out. I don't charge for anything like that. But my phone number is 713-298-1449, and it's always turned on, and I'm always happy to talk to people about issues or concerns that they have. I started my company when my daughter got sick in a hotel room when she was 15 years old, and that was dust mite poisoning. So when I get a call from someone saying their child is having issues, that becomes a top priority for me.
Now, people, since you have Ed's phone number, please do not call him in the middle of the night. If it's emergency, please call 911. But I'm gonna include his contact information in the description as well, and then the link to purchase his book, Mold to Soul, so you can have all that information. Okay, Ed, I thank you so much for sharing all this knowledge with our audience, and I'm looking forward to having you in another interview. And thank you so much again for all your time and effort with me today. I will see you next time.
Thank you, Jill. I enjoy watching your videos. You're one of the best. Use Jill.
Thank you, Ed. And okay, everybody, I'll see you at the next video. If you can comment and let me know what are the topics, real estate related or homeowner tips, home selling tips that you want to know, so we can make more contents like this to you. Please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I'll see you at the next video. Bye-bye.